afternoon.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Today's a very important conversation I think we need to have. Looking at the Human Capital Trends 2023, our 12th edition.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts as you look at what we're seeing and the signals in the market around human capital?
Great. Thanks, Kanye, for having me. Yeah, it's a phenomenal history. I mean, this is the 12th edition. I think this series started 2011, and what we've seen come through these reports is that a lot of clients are beginning to see new trends emerging from the workforce, the people, the leadership, the employee data, the workforce ecosystems. What's great about this report is that it's beginning to anchor the discussions and the trends emanating from the pandemic. Yeah. And that's why it talks about the new fundamentals in a boundaryless world. Because now the walls that used to define functions are dissolving, and organizations are starting to imagine and experiment around working cross-functionally and across silos, across functions, to think of new ways of working. I think the trends and the chapters that you see in this report are quite groundbreaking, and they're giving us insights, new insights into what the world could look like, especially post-COVID.
Mm. So one of the most interesting things for me with regards to the trends is the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what the fundamentals are indicating and what organizations need to start embracing in terms of how we engage with our workforce.
I like that, because the fundamentals are basically saying, so it's a big so what question. Mm-hmm. So once we show the statistics, the statistics and the data from the report, the fundamentals are basically saying there is a new way of addressing some of these issues. Mm-hmm. And so each chapter is backed up by a set of statistics or data points, and then thereafter we put the question, so what does this mean for organizations, for leaders, for the whole ecosystem as a whole? So the new fundamentals are basically allowing the businesses and organizations to experiment, trying new things. And I always say to my clients, trends are trends. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just tells you that this is the direction of travel that a large contingent of clients is doing. If it resonates with your business, it aligns to your strategy, perhaps climb on the wagon. But a trend is a trend. But I just know that, but those that do nothing about the trends are just going to fall behind. Right. And they're going to start catching up. Right. So there's new fundamentals that we're beginning to see as trends, as patterns. And most of them are quite groundbreaking, and they're phenomenal in introducing new thinking as it relates to the workforce, the organizations, and the people. So it's very exciting. When I look at each chapter, it's amazing the content that's coming through.
100% agreed. One of the fundamentals is thinking like a researcher.
Yeah.
And we're seeing organizations move away from roles and move towards skills. What are some of the things you think should underpin that decision as we navigate this transition of how we view the workplace?
Yeah, good, Kanye. That is actually a big question, because the ending of jobs is in sight. In fact, I talk a lot to my clients about this discussion around what do we mean by skills-based organizations. Skills-based organizations just curate work based on skills and based on the appropriateness of those skills as they match work. So humans must be matched with work itself. And progressive companies are also beginning to match skills with the work to be done, but they're also starting to organize their teams according to specific skill sets. Because being boundaryless means that you don't organize according to functions and according to traditional areas where jobs get done. But also thinking in an organization that is bedded down or underpinned by skills allows businesses to innovate, to be more agile, and to learn quickly. The learning curve is more sharp, and we find that agility is high, as well as a power or ability to innovate when you work cross-functionally, as opposed to in the silo functions.
Absolutely agree with that. And so some of the respondents, 46% to be exact, cite legacy mindset as a challenge to transforming in that kind of thinking to become a skills-based organization. How do businesses change their mindsets around this?
It's difficult. It's actually, I was saying to someone that when we hire independent contractors, as an example, we hire for skill. We don't hire contractors to fit in a job. So even at your home, whether you hire a gardener, a painter, a mechanic, you hire them, they don't fit a job. It's very limiting because it's very functional and activity-based. It's not cross-functional. And organizations tend very slowly as a system, whereas dynamism means that you are more agile, you're more flexible, and you can innovate much better. And I think that trend is powerful to begin to help us think differently about jobs, as opposed to just skill arranging teams and setting up teams according to skills.
I'm hearing you speak about agility quite a lot, which is a fundamental, mindset shift, and there's lessons to be learned about what we're seeing in the marketplace, and I think tech also enables us to be better in the workplace. What are your thoughts around how we leverage technology in enhancing human performance?
Yeah, tech. I usually say to my clients, if your tech investment is not going to improve team performance, you might as well just drop it. And if you can't determine how tech is going to improve org performance, and you can't measure the benefit to teams and organizations, you're basically wasting your investment. So tech is supposed to augment team performance and help humans be better at work and make work better for humans, by making sure that, someone else was asking me yesterday, should tech be a foe or a friend? And I say, if you see tech as a co-worker or as an assistant, you're not going to be threatened by tech, because humans must do strategic work, creative work, and innovative work, and machines can do mundane, repetitive, and administrative work. But these two can work hand in glove. We just have to separate the responsibilities. I don't think organizations that are embracing tech realize the power behind the tech adoption as it relates to improving or enhancing team performance and ultimately organizational performance.
I like that. The second fundamental talks about co-creating the relationship.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about co-creating relationships and the dynamic between the different parts of the organization?
Yeah, I like that. I talk a lot about the role of HR, employee data or worker data in terms of relationships. The days where HR used to hoard employee information and only give it to business leaders when it's convenient for them, those days are gone. Employee data, harnessing worker agency, negotiating employee data is one of the things where you can co-create a relationship in an ecosystem where that says we use worker data to make better decisions as business. If worker data resides or sits in HR and consumed by HR, it's probably going to be meaningless to the business, because business leaders also want information curated from those systems that's going to make them make better talent decisions on a day-to-day basis. I think this co-creation agenda is powerful to get leaders closer to understanding employee information, harnessing that data to help them build big talent teams that are going to support them. Because most leaders will always say, my job is just to serve clients. It's not to look at employees. And that kind of leader is living on the wrong side of history. Leaders today, your job as well is also to look after talent, nurture talent, develop them, and understand their needs, and co-create those relationships with them. And so that is why this area of the report is so fundamental.
Sthembiso, you spoke a little bit at the beginning around employee agency.
Yeah.
And we talk about co-creating relationships. We also talk about, our employees have choices.
Yeah.
And their choices are determining how they then engage with us and interact with the organization, interact with society.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how we leverage what is happening for employees to improve the workplace, because if we make people better at work,
Yeah,
they then become more productive and more
absolutely.
engaged.
And when people are productive or they are engaged, they release that discretionary energy that you would otherwise not benefit from them. So worker agency means that from this report, we're beginning to see that workers are vocal about what they demand and expect from the employer and from the relationship. So they're very vocal about saying, we want autonomy, we want flexibility, we want choice, we want to have a voice. And later in the report, I think it's chapter 8, talks about the role of DEI in the equation between employer-employee relationship and discretionary effort as well as psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular chapter around worker agency begins to say, how can organizations enter into a business relationship with employees in such a way that there's benefits for both the organization and the worker? For instance, Gen Zs and millennials are beginning to say, no. Actually, we want to do work that resonates with our values.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do work that aligns with our passions. And thirdly, we want to do work that aligns with what we do in society.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps Gen X's and Boomers are not vocal about this, but the younger generation are quite explicit about what we demand and expect from the workplace, as opposed to 10 years ago where they said, we want a big office, we want to develop, we want snacks in the office. Those days are behind us now. They are basically saying, give me the tools to do the work that I need to do. Give me autonomy to decide where and how I do the work, and give me flexibility to work accordingly so that my work fits nicely with my personal life. And those are the three things that is demanding. And I think the employee value proposition needs to take care of those things.
Absolutely. And
environment in your business, when they're not busy, they're going to start disturbing those that are busy, disturbing those that are productive, or they're going to resort to all kinds of counterintuitive things. For teams to stay switched on, engaged, they have to be busy doing meaningful work, fulfilling work, exciting work, stretching work, and challenging work. And if you get someone whose skill you're going to use only once in a while, in between, what are they doing? And by the way, they don't get fulfilled, and they're not learning, they're not enhancing their knowledge. So what you need on demand, you must hire from outside. It makes sense. So that when that person is not busy with you, they can be busy elsewhere. And doing what they love doing, they feel fulfilled, they feel challenged, it's interesting, it's stretching. So it's just a matter of analyzing the business, understanding that day to day, I'm always going to need this worker because it's core to my business. Almost 6 to 8 hours a day, it's going to be on demand. But those skills that you need sometimes, which I call on-demand skills, you need to outsource. And by the way, you save a lot of effort and money when you do that, because you're not paying for that skill when you're not using it, because someone else is using it. And by the way, the ability for the teams to learn in that kind of environment is super amazing. That is why I always emphasize the idea of workforce ecosystems by leveraging non-employees. And your payroll structure is going to be very, very bare minimum, because it's about skills that you need core to your business that you can't outsource.
that for me sounds like a radical mindset shift.
Yeah, big shift.
So you are recruiting differently, you are managing and rewarding differently.
Yeah.
You are open to an ecosystem that's not dedicated purely to you.
Absolutely.
What does that mean for the HR organization? How does it then organize itself to support this?
I was talking at the weekend about about generative AI and APIs and different ways of recruiting. And again, if you recruit for skill and you become a skills-based organization, the traditional, conventional ways of recruiting, hiring, and onboarding are going to have to shift. So we need, in HR, as an example, organizations need to find skills that are going to have to move with the times, the way you shortlist, and how you create jobs online, on talent platforms, as well as the recruitment agencies. And many recruitment agencies don't even upload CVs. And I was looking at on LinkedIn, someone saying, do we need CVs at all now, or do we need to relook at how we actually orchestrate and showcase our skills through CVs and stuff like that. And it's a very big debate about that, because my feeling about that is that most CVs that I read online are very much about the past. They're never about the future. And people need to learn to audition for careers as opposed to just presenting a CV or a profile to present themselves. I think we can shift the thinking around CVs to around potential, around what's your contribution if you had to work with us, how your contribution would look like. Because most CVs that we read is about your successes in the past that do not guarantee that you'll be successful next time. And that's the thing that we need to shift the thinking about. I just think the CV must be 80% about the future and 20% about what you've done in the past. Because that alone does not guarantee that you will be successful here. And I would like to interview someone that's going to say, I haven't done this before, but I'm committed, I'm excited about starting to do this here, and this is my potential. Because it's something that aligns with who I am, and I'm excited to contribute in this way in the firm. And the CV doesn't say much about that, usually. It's about where you've been, the accolades, the degrees you've studied, and their success in the past, but not about, I would like to do this next. And by the way, why? Why would you like to do this next as part of your development, your career move, whatever the case may be? A lot of candidates don't talk about that. They think that the data coming from the past is going to help them land the job. Will predict
future
the future,
performance,
which sometimes doesn't necessarily work.
And is this a different kind of human capital professional that's able to manage this new boundaryless,
Absolutely.
skill-based
Absolutely.
ecosystem?
I was talking to you the other day when I spoke at a conference in Cape Town at the mining industry. I said, when we talk about upskilling and reskilling as leaders, we don't look at ourselves. Upskilling and reskilling is always about someone else. And some of the leaders today are not just going to be retrofitted naturally and automatically into the future. So we need to think at the whole ecosystem about some of the skills at leadership level even do not guarantee that they can be part of our future. And organizations and leaders need to think introspectively and ask the question, with my skill set, am I part of the future of this company? And to upskill myself to be relevant in the future, what is it going to take? If the company is going to spend 5 years or 3 years upskilling me, by the time I'm ready, the world has shifted and my skill will never be relevant. So we need leaders that are dynamic, that are tech savvy, that are not intimidated by tech, as an example, that are moving with the times. And my friend and I were talking during lunch that, for instance, this morning I went to pick up my car. I saw droves of traffic between 7 and 8. We haven't left from COVID. And it's hard to believe that these people are rushing to the office at the same time when 2 years ago we were able to work from home without rushing to the office. And I'm thinking, even if we have to come to the office, why are we going at the same time? Why don't you start working from somewhere until traffic dies down, and then you go to the office then? Let's say 10 or 11 o'clock. And again, not everyone that you see in traffic is dropping kids at school. So, and again, flexibility, autonomy, and there's a chapter here around work outcomes.
Yes.
If we measure work outputs as opposed to activities, where, how, and when people work becomes irrelevant. And again, that's very much relevant for knowledge workers, people that just need a laptop and an internet to do their jobs.
So leaders become orchestrators as opposed to
Yes.
output managers. I
Yes.
love that. Okay.
Yeah.
The next fundamental is around prioritizing human outcomes.
Yeah.
And we're seeing organizations being held accountable for equitable outcomes,
Yeah.
and enabling and advancing their talent. How do business leaders reorientate themselves to focus on outcomes as opposed to activity?
It's hard. You actually have to disrupt yourself as a leader first. I always say that leaders are not immune to disruption. Reinvent yourself, allow yourself to be disrupted, understand that the old conventional ways of managing teams, leading teams, and orchestrating work are no longer be relevant. So it starts there to accept that my approaches of the past are probably dated or obsolete. Reskill yourself, skill yourself in the new ways of doing things, because when you measure work, especially in these times of boundaryless world, post-COVID environment where flexibility and choice and autonomy is core to people's needs. As a leader, you have to think your approaches when it relates to people and people management. So I just think that it starts there, because younger people in your workforce are not just rebellious, but they're very vocal about this is not work for me. In fact, one of my students told me that I will not accept a job unless it states in the contract that I can work anywhere.
Sure.
Doesn't matter the package, doesn't matter the offer in terms of commercials or economics. If it does not say in writing that I can work anywhere, I'm not interested. And that typically is a Gen Z millennial mindset. They're basically saying, give me the tools to do my work and I'll be at it. And measure me on my work outcomes. So leaders need to think differently. If you are obsessed with over-the-shoulder supervision, thinking that visibility equates to productivity, thinking that presence equates to productivity, you are certainly living on the wrong side of history, because in the past 3 years we've seen that's not the case.
There's talks of a recession looming. We're seeing worker agency become that much more important, especially for Gen Zs, as an example. We're seeing choices being made about holding organizations accountable. Is there still room for organizations to be thinking that worker agency is important?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Kanye. I think worker agency is a phenomenon that's going to carry on for a while, because like I said earlier, a few moments ago, workers these days are becoming younger and they're more deliberate, vocal, and intentional about what they expect from the workplace. Recession or no recession, it's a phenomenon that's going to permeate. I just think that the worker, and I said at a different place the other day that DEI and EVP, or employee value proposition, are moving goalposts. So you need to always continually search and understand what workers are looking for and why they're looking for it, and segment your workforce according to those groupings, because as we said, each generation is looking for different things. I think it's a phenomenon that's going to be with us. I do know, however, that globally more organizations are opening up in terms of availability of skills. The Great Resignation has basically come to full circle, and now new opportunities for skills are opening up. The question is, how do you orchestrate an environment that takes advantage of the non-employee or alternative talent models outside of the organization versus inside the organization? What you can curate inside, you should continue to do that, but you must also look at alternative talent pools. I think that's going to be the key, because the skills, not in South Africa though, the skills that are in demand are not abundant, but globally we're beginning to see more and more demand for new skills. I think the challenge is going to be the organizations to decide which do we build internally and which do we buy externally. And that balance is going to be needed. And again, like I said, something that you're not going to need all the time. You need to be able to buy from the market.
Thank you, Steve. The last fundamental is around leading in a boundaryless world. We've spoken about leadership and the role of leadership in managing the ecosystem, in managing the workforce, in managing the talent, and so forth. What are your closing remarks on what differently our leaders need to do in support of a boundaryless world?
Yeah, I think the challenge for leaders is to understand that leading in functional silos or functional arrangements is soon going to be something of the past. Being obsessed about jobs, functions, is also going to be something of the past. They must allow themselves to be disrupted, to shift the mindset about embracing technology, embracing new ways of working, understanding that they don't own talent. They just need to buy talent, even inside the organization, for specific skills, and let the talent move to other areas where they can showcase their talent. And the other thing that they need to be able to understand is that post-COVID, the world is so boundaryless in such a way that people want to showcase their skills in different non-traditional ways. And leaders need to understand that the old order and the conventional way of doing things is never going to be the same, or is never going to work again. Lastly, I think there's an opportunity for leaders also to disrupt themselves, learning new ways of experimentation, the new ways of leading teams, new ways of motivating teams, and managing work. I think leaders should manage work, not people. People just want to be inspired, motivated, led, supported, but they don't want to be led, especially when they work in a hybrid fashion. Leaders need to understand that visibility doesn't equate productivity. They must be intentional about, because the role of the office has shifted, has changed. So the office should be the input to the work itself. The office should dictate, the work should dictate the role of the office. If your work has to be in an environment where you have to be in a certain place, that the role of the office should be dictated by the type of the work. And lastly, if the leaders can orientate themselves around measuring and being obsessed rather about work outcomes than input activities, perhaps there's hope that the future of our leaders is in sight. And again, and be frank and be open-minded about the fact that their skills cannot just be retrofitted into the future, and find if they think that their skills, knowledge, and experience is probably going to be best used elsewhere, and let them be honest about it. And be frank to say, I'd rather shift into something else because this place is not going to be ideal for my next phase of my growth, as an example. So I think those 3-4 things are going to be critical moving forward for leaders.
Thank you, Sthembiso, for sharing stunning insights, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was nice. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Well done.